What's up, everybody? Welcome to On the Record, a punk music podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ben Brennan, alongside Alex Newman. What's up, Alex?
What's going on, man?
And our first guest, our longtime friend, Josh Fekete.
Hey, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you here.
I pronounced your last name right. I'm not sure if I ever knew how to actually pronounce that.
It's you're closer than I think anyone's ever gotten blind. Usually I get like Fekete. It's Fekete, which is I think Hungarian. So it's an odd one to pronounce. Yeah.
Is it really? I've been saying it wrong this whole time. Dang.
Most people have. I mean, to be fair, I've had friends who I went by a nickname for years, and I had people that knew me for 5 years and didn't know my name was Josh, so I wouldn't feel bad.
All right. So, On the Record is a fan podcast where we discuss the Fat Records catalog, album by album, side by side, in roughly chronological order. We have no true music expertise. We're just some friends shooting the shit about albums we loved growing up. Alex, I'm looking forward to talking to you about Propagandhi's How to Clean Everything. Can you remind me why we decided such a daunting quest in the first place?
I mean, you can call it nostalgia or navel gazing, but this is just a fun way to revisit our youth through the lens of the records we loved, and that's pretty much it.
All right. So let's look at the liner notes for this record first. So record we're talking about is Propagandhi's How to Clean Everything. It was released on May 31st, 1993. Who was in the band for this recording, Alex?
So this was the original lineup of Chris Hanna on guitar and vocals, John K. Sampson on bass and vocals, and George Somoleski on drums. It was recorded at West Beach Recorders in Hollywood, California, and produced by Fat Mike. I do want to talk about some of the other parts of the liner notes here because they really, I guess they made a whole bunch of really goofy addendums to all of this. So there's things kind of mixed in there, like there's something that says all mistakes, fuck ups, production flaws, and touring discrepancies on purpose and are furthermore copyright 1993 Who Gives a Fuck Productions. Funding for How to Clean Everything provided by a grant from Mike Incorporated, trademark. Recorded in a few days at Where's the Beach Studios in Sodomwood, California, February 93. And then the artwork and photography credits are, at first, they seem impressive. It says art by H.R. Geiger and the photography by Robert Mapplethorpe. But, both of those names are spelled incorrectly. So they're just fucking around, obviously.
That's the album artwork if you ordered it off Wish.com. H.R. Geiger with an E and an I.
I remember, so I don't have this physical media in front of me anymore, but I remember when I had it, this record in particular, it was really fucking hard to read any of the actual lyrics because I believe they were all handwritten, and it was like chicken scratch worse than my own. It was pretty rough to read. Do you guys remember that at all?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that it makes perfect sense when, we'll talk about sort of how the band sees this record and sort of their attitude about recording it in the first place. And like all of this like just makes total sense when you understand that they just didn't really give a fuck.
Yeah, they're the most caring and absolute not giving a shit band at the same time. It's wildly impressive.
Yeah, it's like the message is the most important part, but the vehicle in which they convey it, they just seem to not care.
Yeah, who gives a fuck, as the production company is titled.
Right. So with all of that said about the liner notes, let's start talking about side one.
Yeah, so I think for this record, I don't know about you guys, but like I kind of want to just talk about it pretty much every song. I
think we should,
record.
right?
Yeah,
There's so much
I'm into
here.
that. I don't have notes for every song because, to be quite honest, this is a band that's still as much smarter than I have or ever will be. But I will definitely jump in with. There's a good chunk of tracks I have some notes on. So
yeah.
So Anti-Manifesto, it's a great opener. It is. I feel like it deals with one of Propagandhi's favorite kind of song topics. If you look at kind of their catalog going out, which is basically the idea that we're not here for you to have a good time. right? We're not the soundtrack to your rebellious youth. We're here to say something, much more serious. This is, we'll talk more about these when we get to the later records, but I think it's in the mold of the songs both apparently I'm a PC fascist and the songs Less Talk More Rock off of Let's Talk More Rock, as well as Back to the Motor League off of Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes. But I think it's kind of this theme or motif that keeps popping up in Propagandhi records.
Yeah, definitely. I think that as far as first tracks go, this one's really impressive, not just for how it sets the tone for the record, but this is sort of the rare one that, like, it's first track, first album, it sets the tone for their entire discography. It pretty much it does give you sort of the thesis statement on who they are, and it's just really impressive. I do, like going back to what you said about, how they're sort of railing against the idea of being the soundtrack to your rebellion. I love some of the imagery that they have here. It's like, we stand for something more than a faded sticker on a skateboard. Now we've rained on your parade. We're out the door. I just think it just says everything that the record is right at the front.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I have something I also want to point out to kind of foreshadow for a future song. There's quite a few upstrokes in Anti-Manifesto, aren't there?
Yeah, there are.
Are you trying to say it's got a ska vibe?
Yeah.
Is that the implication I'm hearing?
Yeah.
I have to agree with everything both you guys said. I mean, you pretty much nailed my notes. It sets the tone for just how this band operates. I mean, you get like kind of a biting commentary, but then you get like a really funny, like kind of uplifting moment, goofy vibe to it. Goofy vibe to it too. And it just, it's a good indicator of like what you're going to get from this band in a lot of different ways going forward.
Yeah. And I think sort of the period at the end of the sentence, the sort of like the extra touch that just really tells you kind of even more that you need to know about their attitude in general, was the classic "By the way, I stole this riff" at the end.
Yes, I love that.
It's so classic at this point. It's probably one of the most memorable things they do in any of their songs.
What about head, chest, foot, or foot? I mean, I really like the song a lot. I think, the song seems to be getting at kind of kind of like a liberal or centrist dream, and kind of going immediately at that, because it's all about, or possibly just kind of a critique as like Canada is some sort of utopia, right? It's all about like all these things that these kind of governments are doing to keep citizens placated. They subsidize your strip clubs or strip malls. Shit. Forget the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think it's pretty summed up pretty nicely towards the end, where he says, "I'd rather be imprisoned in a George Orwellian world than your pacified society of happy boys and girls. And I'd rather know my enemy and let them know the same, whose windows to slash and whose tires to whose windows to smash and whose tires to slash, and where to point the fucking blame." That pretty much tells you everything about what he's talking about in the song. And I really see. I never really understood the title until I like really looked at it, and I was like, oh, like those are the different places you could shoot somebody.
Yeah, that didn't occur to me until like a lot of things on this record. I so many things click years later where you're like, oh my god, yeah okay. You're like, that's so clever.
Right. It is very clever.
So yeah, I think that is a great second song. And moving just down the line to Hate, Myth, Muscle Etiquette. I like this song, although all I really wrote about it was that we all need a good kick in the ass is great chorus.
It really is.
And then is that the one that I think you had mentioned this kind of off air? Is that the first sighting of Eric Melvin? Is that right, Alex?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, he doesn't seem to be in the liner notes, at least from what I could find. But like, I don't know, Josh. Do you think that? I'm pretty sure that's Eric Melvin from NoFX that's doing
It's-
vocals.
It really sounds a lot like him because I was trying to figure out who in the band it could be, and it didn't even occur to me that it would be like a guest spot. But as you're saying it and I'm thinking about it, it doesn't sound like really anyone else that I can think of.
No, I mean it certainly is not John K. Sampson.
No, and it's not obviously not Chris, and like Jord, I don't know has ever done anything other than like studio backing, track type stuff.
Well, and you
Yeah.
never hear those backup vocals on any of the other records, too.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
Yeah, so that makes me think that, this was, sort of Fat Mike again at the helm on this one. He's probably just like, bringing in people to try and help get it done.
Sure.
Just sort of add another dimension to it, which, it from what we can tell from like seeing how the band thought about the whole recording process of this record, they just didn't take it all that seriously. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's more than just like beyond like the artwork, or something like that Fat Mike actually changed from what the band wanted. I think he probably took some some creative choices with the music itself.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this record, much more so than Let's Talk More Rock, is like 50% Fat Mike vision, 50% Propagandhi vision.
Yeah.
And
It's always carried a strong NoFX vibe to me.
for sure. Yeah, it has that sound that it carries that sound of NoFX, and it also carries that sound that Fat Mike seemed to give to Lagwagon's first record. But I think that of sort of that from that time period, the records that all kind of sounded, like they were in the same arena. This is probably the best one of all of those.
Sure, yeah, definitely. How do you guys feel about Showdown?
Yeah, can we please talk about the song, because it feels like
It
to
is
me,
a real sore thumb.
See, I love it.
I do
think
too.
It's so fucking charming.
yeah, it feels like, to me, it feels almost like it's somehow the centerpiece track, in that it's I mean, it's probably this is probably the longest song on this album. But it also like it really shows like a full range
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
sort of styles, and just having John Sampson in there singing is like, you don't really like, it's the only time that you get both of them singing in the same song.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, so that's one of the things I wanted to pull from the Exclaim. So there's this Exclaim article that we'll link in show notes at some point, that gives a history of Propagandhi. And so there was a quote from Sampson about this song in particular. He says, "It's a song I wrote when I was 16. To me, it shows before and after of me as a writer. If you see what I was like before I joined Propagandhi and what I was like after, it was an education and made me into a much better and more focused writer, I think. So that one makes me cringe a little bit." And then he talks about being nostalgic for being that lost. I think, which puts him at 17 in that video that we were watching of them, by the way.
That is insane.
Yeah, geez.
Well, okay, but hang on. Didn't he say that he wrote it when he was 16? I don't know that means that he wrote it like right as
that's
being
true,
recorded.
too.
Good point.
It's
Yeah.
probably a little bit younger, but still, like, it is interesting to see that like one of the first songs that he wrote is somehow folded in here, because it's really like, it's obviously not just his song. Like, there's such like this.
Yeah, there's two songs in one.
It really
Yeah,
does
it
feel
really-
like two songs.
Well, and I think it's kind of interesting because, like, when I think about it, and I think about like listening to Propagandhi in high school, like, you're learning about all this political stuff through listening to bands like Propagandhi, but at the same time, you're also like a 16-year-old boy in high school, and so like,
Yeah.
they're like, girls are a thing, right? And like, so the weaving of those two things together, I think, like, really kind of captures a a overconfident 16-year-old asshole in ways that not many songs can.
Yeah, and I definitely feel like that was a vibe with a lot of bands around that time too. Because I remember Bigwig's first record had that song about like the girl in the green jacket. So there was always kind of that like forlorn, sort of like lonely skater boy love song kind of thrown in there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like that. I think that's probably where the song's title comes from, right? It's the showdown of like the two sides of the mind almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then the GE/P, it stands for greenest eyes, and then / preamble. That's apparently what the meaning of that part is, which I never knew.
The green eyes thing, I never knew anything about what the meaning, but yeah, the green eyes thing made sense when I read that in the article. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I also want to talk about this. I think this is probably one of the most interesting things about this song. Going back to it, is you can see a sort of meta narrative come out of this one, because you think about the things that he's talking about. Chris's lyric is, tension in the air, I cannot bear. What the fuck am I accomplishing? Absolutely nothing. All these words are boring. It's time for action, but you've taught me to be a pawn. It won't last for long. I think you can look at this and sort of compare it to the relationship that Propagandhi has with Fat Mike and Fat Wreck in general, that you'll see on later records. I mean, you see it deteriorate on the records even, because they keep attacking them, and like and it's funny. It just shows just like how different these two people look at music, and how you use it. Fat Mike obviously using it as like it's like an entrepreneurial venture, whereas Propagandhi is more about like, no, it's just about the message. It's not about anything else.
I mean, like Propagandhi operated the G7 Welcoming Committee, I think, pretty close to like kind of like a collective thing, as opposed to like Fat Wreck operated kind of as a profit maximizing venture.
G7 always felt more like a vehicle for like people to create art rather than like a business to make art, like, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I just think it's really interesting to look at this song and then kind of be able to pull that out from it, like wow, okay, it almost feels like it relates directly to that, even though at the time most likely not.
All right, well, do we want to talk about one of the possibly the most controversial songs on the first half of the record, at least, but maybe not? Ska Sucks.
One of the hottest takes of all time, and I hard disagree because I fucking love ska.
I do not, but this song is like, it's just great in general. As far as joke tracks go, I think this one's a really great one.
Absolutely.
Because to me, like, I'm not really big on joke tracks, but when I love one, it's because it's like really making fun of something, like in a really fun way, and this one totally kills it. Making fun of this subgenre, or I mean, I guess it's making fun of ska in general, but like I always think of it as like ska punk sucks.
Oh yeah,
he's making fun of third wave ska.
It coincides entirely with that. Like that's why the song was written.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I still love that Suicide Machine's Destruction by Definition. But
that's a like near perfect damn record. It's wild.
It is.
But it's also not really a ska record.
It's very minimal ska on it.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a 30%, like a 30-70 split ska.
Yeah. That record
is just barely there.
And so I would never begrudge somebody for thinking that ska sucks. One of my favorite things on this, I am a big fan of laughter in songs. And his snickering at the end is just so fucking obnoxious and
I love it.
I love it.
Oh man, like And like you actually hear that in a lot of records around this time period too. Like you hear that type of sort of approach to recording vocals. It's just like they add in all those little extra things. And I agree. I love that little touch as well that's in there.
It's moments like that are like the charm of this record to me, and like the John K. Samson moments in that song. Like there's such a like focused band lyrically. Like it's such heavy topics and stuff, but then you get those little reprieves of like, ska sucks, and like Chris laughing at the end, or like just snickering, and like the snide humor and stuff. Like it does so much to break the record up in like a good way.
Yeah. It's because it's a pretty long record too, and like those breaks work pretty well.
Is it long?
I mean, there's like 14 songs on it, aren't there?
No,
like
there's only 12.
There's only 12.
Well, there's 14 with the fucks at the end. You get like there's like two tracks of there's like 2 tracks of them just yelling "fuck."
Well, and then there's a cheap trick cover at some point at the end too, right?
That's the last track. But as far as Ska Sucks goes, at least Chris got his wish, right? The trend will die out with any luck. It did. Died.
Well, what was so prescient about it though is like this was like 2 years before the huge ska explosion, even.
Right. Exactly.
Like 3 years from this song, you've got like Save Ferris, No Doubt, Mighty Mighty Bosstones, Real Big Fish, like playing massive shows and selling like obscene amounts of records. It's like once again, like Propagandhi ahead of the curve.
Yeah, they had to get in there before anybody else even tried to do it. They're just like, yeah, by the way, this fucking sucks.
It's a song that like ends up enduring in a weird way too, because like not long after you've got Against All Authority, who are like half of a ska band covering it, and I guess Chris Hanna talked on his podcast. Apparently, I don't know what the band was, and I struggled to find the episode, but it was, I don't know how I would have even jumped through to find the clip. But apparently some band actually did write like a response song to Ska Sucks in a complete serious and earnest manner. And Chris was like, how does no one get that joke? Like to take it that seriously where we're like, you're going to fire back. Like it's not an Eminem song. You're not like rap battling.
That's what the snickering at the end is, obviously.
Right. Like there's no way to make it any more clear that like that song is a goof.
Yeah. I mean, I'm of the mind that we need more diss tracks in punk music.
Dude, hard same. Jacksonville rap scene is like apparently the most crazy thing in the world right now. And those dudes just do diss tracks left and right about like dead rappers, and it is terrifying. But it's also really fun. So I definitely agree we need more diss tracks.
It's amazing. Personal aside, my favorite part of this song is where he's singing to Rudy. That's just the best part.
Yes, I do love it. As a big Specials fan, I'm in.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, so middle finger response. Moving to the next song on this side. Do you guys have much to say about it? Like, I think it's a pretty good song, but like, I actually think like if it had been like kind of like a coda to head, foot, chest, or head, chest, or foot, it might have worked better.
That's actually interesting. I never really thought about that. It's nothing super remarkable musically. I mean, like it holds up against anything else on the record. I think lyrically, it's my favorite example of how antagonistic they can be and how like snide they can
be.
Yeah, definitely. I like the song. The part that I like the most, though, is the very end, where Chris is basically talking about how he's got a lot of work to do on telling like 3 billion people "fuck you."
Yeah, that's a great line, because the census indicates, and this atlas has related, 3 million humans I haven't irritated.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of work to do. 3 billion people. That's 3 billion snotty fuck yous. Fuck you. Fuck all of you.
It's a great way to close out the first side of the record too.
That is, yeah.
Wait, is "Stick the Flag" not the last song on side 1?
I always thought it started the second side, but I could be wrong.
Oh, I could be wrong.
It starts the second side.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
I think, never mind. My notes are wrong.
Yeah, I tried looking up the original release the original release had that be the end of the first side.
All right. Yeah, no, that actually is a very good ending on the first side. That's probably why I thought it didn't fit as well where it was because I was thinking Stick the Flag came right after it on that side. Yeah. All right.
Any more comments on the first side? I don't really have anything else to add.
No, that pretty much does it for me. I mean, it's a great start to a record. It's a really, really solid first half of an album. That's
really
for
strong.
sure. I think it's hard to say. I almost want to say it's the more varied of the two sides, but as I look at side 2, I think that might actually not be the case.
Yeah. All right, before we flip over to side 2, let's just take a quick break and do some shout outs. I'll start. My first my shout out really just it goes out to the article that Ben had referenced. It's an excellent story from Exclaim magazine that covers the history of Propagandhi. It was written by Greg Pratt, and it was titled Propagandhi, Nazi Baiting and Hardcore Raging. It was written in 2012, so it's almost 10 years old now. But it covers the band's entire career up to that point. But it's absolutely worth the read. It's pretty long, but it's definitely worth checking out. And if you're too lazy to Google it, we'll have a link in the show notes.
So I want to give a shout out to Starbucks for creating the Trenta. The Trenta is 30 ounces of coffee, 30 ounces to freedom. I bought one this morning, and I think that all of you should buy it as well. Let's hear it for the Trenta.
30 ounces to freedom. Here. My shout out is to the Eyesore video channel on YouTube. I'm not sure if this person is like a Canadian local or something, but they have a lot of early Propagandhi, like full set bootlegs. The one we've referenced a couple times, which is the band quite literally playing in like an open parking lot with somebody's Jeep parked behind them. And like a couple other early to mid, like 94. There might even be some 93 stuff on there, but it's just a really cool look. Like pro shop video, like really decent audio. Like it's for 1993, it's a really impressive recording. And well worth your time to check out and just kind of sit back and enjoy.
I will add that you are in particular are notorious for watching lots of bootlegs on YouTube. So everybody that's listening, take this very seriously. This is a serious recommendation. Josh is definitely a connoisseur. And the one specifically that you're talking about that you shared with me, those from '94. That one, it's really good. And I was maybe a few songs into it before I was thinking to myself, this is pretty good. I can a pretty decent recording. But after a certain point, they hit.
Yeah.
It's probably Nation States was the song where I would ended up just watching the rest of the set.
Yeah, that's a great rendition of that song.
They killed it, man. And then they do a version of Holly Salisi Up Your Ass that to me sounded like an early Against Me track. It just had a different vibe.
Yeah, it had an interesting aggression
to it. It was really good. And it would have been interesting. It's interesting, I think, if you read that Exclaim article, the band will talk about how they just didn't, or at least Chris anyway, didn't seem to really like the record, like the way it was recorded.
Yeah, that was my thought too.
I've got a quote from him here. It says, "If I hear it with other people around, I'm like, fuck, turn it off. It's too much, too ridiculous. But we didn't know what else to do. Just press record, go. Start singing in some snarl and some weird accent that I don't know what to do. But it was fun. It was a crazy time. On that record, there are fucked up drum rolls, guitars that are not in sync. But I like I like it now that Pro Tools has taken over and you go see a live band and 90% of them don't resemble the recording at all. I wish our debut was more like Venom's Welcome to Hell or Bad Brains' Rock for Light, but we're not those bands. We're some guys from Portage." But but I feel like watching this video in particular or anything from this era, it's probably much closer to what they wanted.
I agree. Like I was shocked when I went back to it because I used to have it downloaded and I watched it again recently for the first time, probably in like 4 or 5 years. And I was really shocked at like how aggressive the guitar tone is. And it's like, it really is like for as much as it's close to the record, like the tone is so different.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to like what Propagandhi sort of saw themselves as. They saw themselves as a
Absolutely.
progressive thrash band was what they had originally put on the flyer when they were looking for a bassist, and that's what that's the flyer.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what.
Yeah, it's the flyer that
Samson's
right.
on
Yeah,
the
and he found
flyer.
it in a skate shop too, which is funny.
Is Voivod really the only band that actually was ever labeled that seriously? Progressive thrash?
At the time, I would say that that's probably accurate. Yeah, I mean, since then, there's probably been a lot of bands labeled that, but Voivod was definitely doing like weird as fuck metal before like weird as fuck metal was really cool.
All right, you guys want to flip over to side 2?
Sounds good.
So
Let's do it.
actually, you guys talking about the way they want to sound, I think is actually a good segue into stick the fucking flag up your goddamn ass, you son of a bitch. Because I think that song in particular is the closest from this record to what they end up sounding like going forward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
it's no
absolutely.
surprise that's what they open their set with in that video too. You know, it's
yeah, it's a juggernaut of a riff. It really is.
I fucking love like perfect fucking song. Talk about fucking prescient. Like the stuff in that song was so goddamn relevant when we were in high school, you know, in 2000,
Oh, yeah.
2004. Like everything he was saying just like echoed like all the fucking shit that you were like, you know, having shoved down your throat like in the lead up to the Iraq War. So I loved
Sure.
this song so much at the time.
Especially after 9/11.
And like,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, yeah, post 9/11, it's like a really takes on an even bigger meaning too.
Yeah, it just goes for the jugular, you know. That the idea of blind nationalism and buying into the narrative that the government wants to feed you, like unquestioned. It's great. And one aside that I noticed, this band really likes to talk about putting things up people's asses.
It's true. They're a big fan of toilet humor and ass humor in general, I feel like. Also, it took me 20 full years of listening to this record before last summer when I realized that the guitar ring out at the end is the melody of "Oh Canada."
That's a really cool little touch. I did
yeah.
not know that at all.
Yeah, because it ends and it goes dun 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 dun. And like fades out, and I was like, "That's fucking "Oh Canada." I was like, "How weird is that?"
I never put that together. So
Yeah, there's no way I could have known that.
I wouldn't even know how. I think I was just sitting in the car, like just listening to the end of the song, and I was like, "Well, I'll let it finish before I go in." And like for whatever reason, it clicked all of a sudden. I was like, I started laughing. I was like, "That's amazing."
Did you guys know why Bette Midler now assumes sainthood? Because I found that out this week.
No.
Okay,
No.
so I'm pretty sure that they are referencing the movie For the Boys with Bette Midler.
Oh my god, yeah, you're probably right.
Like, it's like all like about like trying to like dress up the whole fucking, you know, warfare in general. Like it's all USO shit.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think she did a lot of stuff with Bob Hope too, for like they did those USO tours and things like that.
So yeah. I think it's that, but other things about this song.
God damn, that's just so smartly written.
Oh, I was reminded. So you know, we were War on Terror was when me and Alex were in high school, and for starters, our high school did that crazy fucking outline of the USA with like a bunch of students spelling out U, S, and A.
Yeah,
we got yelled at a bunch.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was like this aerial photo from like the fucking like of the football field, and so they got, I think the seniors were the outline of the United States, then like juniors, sophomores, and freshmen spelled out U, S, and A, and then there were a handful of us. You were supposed to wear red, white, or blue that just didn't do that.
Sure.
And they were initially just going to make us sit out until they realized that most people were really happy about that, and then they made us disperse into the crowd so that we wouldn't be as noticeable.
Oh my
and,
God, that is
and I believe
hilarious and just sounds
that
awful.
day and fairly frequently, they would give out little miniature American flags throughout that time of kind of post 9/11 shit, and I loved burning those miniature American flags.
The big thing here was those stupid car magnets that everyone bought after everything happened. People like every shitty cash grab merch company would make like stand as one ribbons on like magnets, and I just remember so many like punk friends, like edgelord 16-year-olds walking through parking lots and like pulling those off cars and just whizzing them like onto the highway.
That's amazing.
Oh, all right. You guys want to talk about the I guess one of the more perplexing songs on the record?
Very, very odd.
It is. But I just want to say this might be, I mean, it's definitely the odd one out, but it actually might be my favorite song from this record. I just think it's really interesting. And it further shows, I think, Propagandhi's range. But I think it also does sort of show you the direction they end up heading, because like if you combine some of the things that they do on Haile Selassie Up Your Ass with stick the fucking flag up your goddamn ass, those two songs have elements that sort of build what the band is later.
Mm-hmm.
Because this song has such like a different approach. It has that sort of like that the guitar sort of like ringing out and has like more atmospheric effects.
Yeah, it's definitely the most adventurous song, I think, musically.
Yeah. It's still like, lyrically it's still very timely. Just because, it is obviously referencing Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate that it's still as relevant as it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you can say that for a lot of topics on this record, which in retrospect, it kind of becomes a bummer in that way, because there's so many elements of things they sing about, and you're like, boy, it kind of sucks that this has either come back around or has just not gone away whatsoever.
But, from what Ben was saying about how it's almost confusing. That's the title that's confusing. Because
So I had a different interpretation of the song when I was younger. I understood the title sort of when I was younger. So what did you find confusing about the title?
Because I don't quite understand I wasn't able to find a connection between Haile Selassie, who, he was the emperor of Ethiopia from 1930 to 1974, and he's like the namesake of the Rastafari movement. And they do talk about, they mention Rastafarianism in the song, but I just don't quite see the connection between that and the Israel Palestine.
Yeah. So there's a bit of that. So when I first saw it, if I recall correctly, I initially thought it was a reference to the fact that like one of the first people to kind of sound the alarm about fascism in Europe was Haile Selassie. In particular, I think it was sounding the alarm about Mussolini. And so I initially took this as kind of a now the Israeli government is like running an apartheid state sort of thing, like as a kind of like an irony aspect to that. Because I didn't understand the connection to Rastafarianism when I first heard the song. And the closest, there's the closest thing you can think about it in terms of the connection to Rastafarianism is just that, like, I'm thinking maybe it was like big in like, I don't know, like punk or alternative or even like political circles to like convert to Rastafarianism. And like the song is just pointing out that like it's a it's basically just Judaism and Christianity with some extra shit thrown on top, to some degree. Now, I don't mean to be dismissive of it at all, but like that's kind of the message of the song, right? Like an amalgamation of Jewish scripture and Christian thought. Well, what will that get you? Not a fuck of a lot. Actually, got one right that time.
Hey,
Yeah.
So it's weird, like what was going on at the time. Trying to figure out what was going on at the time that caused them to want to point at Rastafarianism in particular with this song. I don't know
Yeah.
if maybe Rastafarians are particularly Zionist, and maybe that also added to it.
Yeah, I'm
But-
not sure. Yeah, so I mean that's it, but it's very clearly about Israel in general. Especially, something that's just like so relevant is the line, "Your deed is the gun in your hand." Like it's still so fucking true.
yeah, with the settlers and shit.
Right.
Um,
But so one other thing that I found interesting about this song was, and this might just be me, I did listen to these songs back to back to kind of see how similar they really were, but especially the last like 30 seconds of this song remind me so much of the Smiths' Meat is Murder. It has those really sort of like quiet, it's like a quieter moment, but it really like has almost like sort of like ambient effects to it. But it's really interesting, the instrumentation in that last part of the song that's almost easy to forget about, especially when it's mixed into when you're listening to the whole record. It's kind of easy, I think, to sort of zone out at the end of the song and not really pay that close of attention, but it's really interesting, and it really, like, you see that type of those quieter moments creep into later Propagandhi records.
yeah.
so you'll notice I was real quiet there. My notes for the song literally say, "This song is a prime example of moments where I am not smart enough to fully appreciate this band."
Yeah, I mean, it really does show their, like, just how good they are at writing music. Because
Absolutely.
this song is so different from everything else on the record in a bunch of different ways. But it's really like that last 30 seconds where I was just kind of like, oh, this really does kind of show just how good they were. And that it's
Oh,
not
absolutely.
like it definitely shows that they have so much skill, and that they'll put, on even further display later on. Are we ready to talk about Fuck Machine?
Yeah.
Well, I'm always ready to talk about the fuck
Because
machine.
this song's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I think this is another thing that I would call like a Propagandhi trope, like in terms of like topics that they just keep mining again and again, and kind of writing like similar songs over and over again, but like improving on them or taking them in different directions, sort of thing, right? So like this is largely about like
Sure.
male sexual programming to a certain degree. There's other stuff about kind of like objectification in Hollywood, but like, you can think about it as pretty similar to like Refusing to Be a Man off of Let's Talk More Rock, or Ladies Night in Loserville, which is my particular favorite of these types of songs from them, that off of Today's Empires, Tomorrow's Ashes.
Yeah. There's not really a whole lot more to say about the lyrics to it. Like that pretty much that sums it up pretty succinctly.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the song is actually the interlude in the middle of the song, which is fucking awesome. They just like that sort of breakdown is great, and
The like the picking and stuff that's in the middle.
yeah, just the soloing, whatever you call it, and how they bridge to the last verse. It's great.
The conditioned attraction.
Yeah.
Part. Yeah.
It's interesting too. Like, I know, like Ben mentioned with Propagandhi having these kind of tropes, and like that's the thing I think that keeps it from ever getting boring or like eye rolling with these guys, is like they do improve every time, and like it's always sort of a different slant, or like kind of a different angle on things, and there's it's so like clear how much passion is there, and like that they're not just singing for like, they're not just bringing these topics up for like brownie points or for show or anything like that. It's because they actually give a fuck about them.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, it's funny because like this might be satire is also sort of in that same trope. Kind of dealing, yeah, I guess a bit, yeah.
Yeah, that is an odd 1-2 punch with those songs.
Yeah, there's something going on there. I'm not really sure.
It's not, well, it's satire.
It might be.
But is this? And I never even really put this together until I looked at this track list, because I mean I hadn't listened to this record in such a long time. I'd forgotten even a lot of the song titles. Is this the origin of None More Black's later record? This is satire. Is this what they're referencing?
Ooh, could be, because it's not a Seinfeld reference, right? I know they use a lot of Seinfeld references.
Yeah, I think they only did that on the first one. I think.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I took one look at this track and I was just like, oh, that reminds me of the No More Black record.
That's funny.
I wonder what it's a reference to. Maybe what it's a reference to is what No More Black is referencing as well.
It could be. But yes, obviously it's satire.
Yeah, I would think so, because it gets real weirdly aggressive really fast.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it this one, you know, kind of loops back into like kind of the lyrics and refusing to be a man on Less Talk More Talk, or Less Talk More Talk.
Man, your mouth is garbage today, bud.
Because like that one takes it like kind of a similar avenue, but like from a serious perspective with refusing to be.
Yeah, that's true. This is like the silly kind of like tongue-in-cheek version.
Yeah.
Who will help me bake this bread?
This one, for me, it's fine. I don't dislike it. I just think that like when you put it up against the rest of the record, it just doesn't really stand out that much.
I do kind of feel like it's an interesting. I know the cover song comes after this, but it does feel like a cool bookend to Anti-Manifesto, in that like they feel like similar songs to me. Like lyrically and the vibe of it kind of feels similar to Anti-Manifesto, and I really love the riff in that song. I think it's really great.
Yeah, it's great.
I love the kind of the you boycott your brain, you answer with fists, my question still persists part of the song quite a lot. I think it's like I could see them really not liking this song because like I don't think it's nearly as like saying anything substantial like a lot of the rest of them are. Like this is just like a really good like punk anthem, like, you know, raise your fist type shit.
Yeah, there's not really a whole lot else to say about it, but I could definitely see that.
And then I mean, the Cheap Trick cover is apparently what got him signed to Fat Wreck, right?
Yeah, Mike loved the fact that they played a cheap chick. Wow, look what you're doing to me here, Ben. Mike saw him play the Cheap Trick cover and like was kind of just sold on him right there.
Which is so wild to me, mostly because this is the song on the record that I don't need. Like I just don't like I'm so glad that this song is placed at the end of this record, because the problem that we had with Duh from Lagwagon was that they had those cover songs or whatever mixed into the record, and it's like, no, this shit belongs at the end, because like I don't need this in the middle of the record.
I actually went back and listened to Duh before I listened to the podcast, and I found myself saying the exact same things. And when I listened to this record, again, same idea, made me appreciate the fact that, because I do love covers. Like I'm a total sucker for like a silly cover song, but yeah, I don't give me it as like a secret track or like a reverse on track one and go into negative time, or you know, whatever you got to do. But I definitely don't need them breaking up the record.
Definitely not. So yeah, I mean, I personally, meh. This for me. This is the worst track on the record.
Yeah, without a doubt. You guys want to talk about the bonus tracks that are on the?
Oh yeah, we should talk. We should definitely
I'm
talk
into
about the B-sides and what they left off of it, because I think that this record is way stronger if you remove "I Want You to Want Me" and you instead drop in "Pigs Will Pay" or "Homophobes"
Yes.
are pissed because they can't get laid.
I love both those songs.
Yeah, they're really great, especially "Homophobes." That's a great. I mean, it's like a classic Propagandhi track for me.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was I think might have been the first song I ever heard.
It might have
from
been
them.
mine as well.
Because I definitely my first exposure to them was definitely on the
Yep.
Fat comps, but I don't remember if did they have a song on 4? They didn't,
I don't
right?
remember, but I think
I don't.
But I
Think
think
they did.
this one was on one of those first 2 Fat comps.
Yeah, it was on the second one.
and that was one of the ones that I bought early on. And I remember listening to that song, and just being like, "Oh man, that's awesome."
Yeah, going back to the songs that we wish would have been on here, I would love to have been able to have not only Pigs Will Pay but Leg Hold Trap on there as
Really,
well.
because
So
I like Leg Hold Trap. It's
I
weird,
like
but
the
I like
music.
it.
I hate the vocals. Man, like that one. That one feels like that one feels like it should have been cut.
my only
It's like an ugly pet, I think, is like the way I see it. Like it's just got I love it, but it's not pretty, but it's got charm to it.
Yeah.
so I should listen to it again. My only note on it was that it sounded really DC influenced. Am I off base with that, or?
I don't have enough reference points, but I mean it's got an interesting like melody
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah, it's where Showdown is kind of like showing you like John K. Samson was sort of like his sort of vocal approach to vocals was already kind of like almost comes fully formed at this point, because like it sounds the way he sounds later with the Weaker Thans. But this song actually shows the opposite. This is the song where you just like, it's like, oh yeah, you can tell he has no idea what he's doing.
Right, it's the snotty, like aggressive
And it just
side.
doesn't work for me personally. I just think that this song absolutely should have been cut from the record, and I'm glad that it was, because it's just not. I just don't think it's very good.
I would love to see the alternate universe though, where like John K. Samson forms a band that sounds like Hold Trap before breaking that up and starting a band that sounds like the Weaker Thans.
I mean, it could have been interesting.
I'd love like a shitty like 6-song like just 8-minute EP of like songs that just kind of sound like Hold Trap.
I feel like he could have done at least a couple of songs that are better than this one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there would have been some gems in there, I think.
But Pigs Will Pay, great track. Homophobes Are Pissed,
Super
so
good.
Yeah. Pretty good B-sides.
Yeah, I think you're hard pressed to find better ones from records that came out in this era, or like really find any at all. Because I feel like a lot of these bands just threw everything at the wall, whether it be on a Cinema Beer Belly comp or a Fat comp or a Punkorama or whatever, random company needed a compilation only song back then.
Yeah.
All right, you guys want to talk about our rival records? This
yeah.
is our segment where we each give a record that came out around the same time as whatever record we're talking about that week. So this week it's How to Clean Everything. So I guess I'll get it started. The record that I picked, I was looking for something. Again, when I'm approaching this, I'm not always trying to find something that sounds exactly the same, but something that has kind of the same spirit. And so a band that really rivaled Propagandhi, both in terms of the wit and the antagonistic politics, would be Born Against. And so their record, Battle Hymns for the Race War, came out in 1993. So I think that would be a pretty good rival record for this. I can't say the same exact politics, but fairly similar kind of left radical type politics as Propagandhi, and a very, very antagonistic streak.
Oh yeah.
As can be seen by the song "Born Against or Fucking Dead," which kicks off with another Fat Wreck band. Well, at the time weren't a Fat Wreck band, but future Fat Wreck band, "Sick of It All," leaving a very threatening voicemail for Born Against. The issue with that was Born Against saying some unkind things about "Sick of It All" being, I don't even think on a major label, but just having major label distribution for their records. And we're pretty much called sellouts for that. Sick of It All didn't take too kindly. I think it all culminated in a what I think most people have said was a really fucking stupid debate on WNYU between both bands. But similar sort of headspace as Propagandhi. Sonically, I think it sounds to my dumb ears like kind of like Black Flag meets Fugazi. So yeah,
Yeah.
what do you guys think of the record?
I think it was pretty good. I had never really listened to this band before, but I really enjoyed the first track, "Murder the Sons of Bitches." That's a song about the death penalty. I thought definitely the lyrics that definitely feel the thing that's closest to Propagandhi here.
Yeah, I would hard agree with that.
But I think absolute like best track title here was "Set Your AM Dial for White Empowerment." I mean, talk about like antagonistic.
Oh, absolutely. And that feels like if you didn't tell me that was a Born Again song, I would ask you if it was a Propagandhi song.
Definitely.
So I mean, it lines up with that antagonistic kind of bent to it.
Yeah, and pretty much right off the bat, they attack Rush Limbaugh, which always
Rest
good.
in shit, motherfucker.
Yeah, rest in shit.
Later, stupid.
But I really like that lyric. "Aunt and uncle tune the radio in, make my cousins in the car listen, so someday they'll be able to distinguish white from wrong." That's good. Yeah.
Shots fucking fired.
WLW right there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's conservative radio in the Cincinnati area.
Wow. Yeah, that's always fun. We have a guy here who thinks that coronavirus is a hoax and all those typical.
Oh, and he has a
things.
radio show. That's nice.
Yeah, it's a real good time. It's real nice.
Josh, what about you? Yeah.
You want me to go? You want me to go next? I'll go. Mine is kind of an odd one, but I approached it with kind of a similar outlook to Ben, where I wanted to find something a little bit out of the box, but still had some connections and kind of similar vibes to it. I went with Sepultura's Chaos AD, which is their 5th album. It's kind of like a transition record for them. Like everything up to that point had kind of been like thrash and like death influences. Chaos AD is where they started kind of stylistically changing. So I was, from that viewpoint, I was like, there's some similarities there. But lyrically, both bands are, there's a serious political angle to both bands, a lot of social awareness and stuff. Sepultura would sing about David Koresh and things here, but they would also sing about cultural stuff, from their homeland of Brazil. And yeah, just it felt like a similar vibe as far as like the musical shift, except Propagandhi's Canadian.
Yeah, I love this record. It might be my favorite Sepultura record. I'm not sure.
It's this or Roots, because I really do love Roots, even though like every new metal band in the world like cites it as an influence. It's still just it's such a banger, but this record just rips.
Alex, what did you think of it?
It's typically not the type of thing that I would listen to, but I did like it. Particularly the song "Biotech is Godzilla." That's a great track.
Yeah. Do you know the like, no pun intended, the roots of that song? Like who helped craft that song?
No.
So it was Jello Biafra.
Really?
Yeah, they Max Cavalera approached Jello Biafra essentially wanting to do, because they had covered Nazi Punk's "Fuck Off" before, and they were very like vocal about being big fans of like 80s punk and hardcore and stuff. And he approached Jello and was like, I want to do Nazi Punk's "Fuck Off" too, because I guess at the time in that part of Brazil there was kind of a big rise in that sort of like belief and behavior. And Jello was like, well, I don't like the idea of doing like a sequel to something I've already done. He's like, but I have this song, Biotech is Godzilla. And he's like, he kind of explained it to him and brought it to him, and they ended up
That's
doing
awesome.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking, I think that was the song that I thought most probably sounded like it could have been a Propagandhi song.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fair for sure.
See, what's so interesting to me about that was the fact, like, just that whole story about how it was actually Jello that brought that song to them. I listened to that song and I was like, oh, this seems like it's very specific to this band because it seems to be like talking about the deforestation of the rainforest down in Brazil. But that's interesting that it was actually not technically their song. Did Jello did he write it, or did lyrics included, or did they write the lyrics?
So the article I found, it says, or actually an article, it's from their wiki, but the citing is there. Sepultura honored one of their biggest idols, Jello Biafra. Max had called him asking for a sequel to something like Nazi Punk's Fuck Off Part 2. Biafra wasn't interested and suggested a song called Biotech is Godzilla that he had written during his visit to Brazil in 1992 to a world conference called ECO92. Jello spent 10 minutes explaining me his crazy theories. He said that George Bush had sent a group of scientists to Brazil to test germs and bacteria on human beings and use them as guinea pigs. The lyrics claim that biotechnology created AIDS, but they don't say that the technology is bad, just that it's in the wrong hands.
Wow.
It's a very strange. The whole thing is weird.
That's pretty weird. But cool song.
Yeah, very cool.
I'll also say,
what was your rival record, Alex?
Just one more comment on this band in general was when I saw a picture of them, I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense that these are the guys playing this music. Like,
absolutely,
it's like a band full of guys with necks bigger than my head.
And it's two brothers named Max and Igor.
What?
Like you can't make that up. It's Max's brother's name is Igor.
I took one look at these guys and I was like, I would not ever want to even remotely cross these dudes. Holy shit.
Right.
But anyway, so my rival record is probably it relates very directly to How to Clean Everything, but maybe not so much in the ways that you'd expect. It's the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, Don't Know How to Party. And this this is, my direct response to Ska Sucks. Because this is one of the few ska records that I can go back to and still have a good time with. I was never really I think I had a brief period in high school where I really liked ska, but it did not last. You outgrow it so quickly, it seems. Unless you're Josh, obviously.
Yeah, I was gonna say, speak for yourself here.
But I do think that they're at least on an ideological scale, I would say that the Bosstones and Propagandhi, they're pretty much aligned. The Bosstones are far less political, but they still have political songs here.
Chris Hanna also did announcing on Jimmy Kimmel, just like Dickie Barrett.
Are you serious? Wait, what? Okay, all right. I was like,
I made that up.
Wait a second, that's
complete lie.
That would be truly wild.
That silence was deafening, though.
Because there's no way that I would have known either way.
Right.
But I mean, it's really funny. I did know that Dickie Barrett had done that, but I had totally forgotten until you said it. So that's a fun little aside. But I just think that this record in particular is so different from most of the ska punk that was around at the time, or definitely different from what would come later and actually be huge. Because it's not that super corny, cartoony ska that you hear from like Real Big Fish. It's definitely way
Right.
more of like, you get way more of like the punk side of things. It definitely has more of like a probably like East Coast hardcore sort of influence to the rock side of things when you're not talking about the ska elements. But yeah, they do get a little bit political. Something like Holy Smoke, which it attacks hypocritical religious zealots that are profiting from their followers, and while looking down their noses at people. And Tin Soldiers talks about kids signing up for the military and for looking for fame and glory, and then they kind of have to deal with the grim realities of what happens after the fact. But
what's the song about the dead mouse about?
I think it's about I think it's funny because I saw a relationship between that song and the song from the Born Against record, Mountain Dew. It's basically, they're about like marketing almost, like, and how fucking shameless it is.
Oh,
right.
I didn't. Yeah, I just he kept the song title is Last Dead Mouse, and then he's talking about something about I believe in my product. I love what I sell. I was like, selling dead mice. I guess that is exactly what the song is about.
That's that. Right. That seems to be, but like I feel like it's probably just talking about salesmen in general and how they're willing to they'll sell you, they'll dedicate, sort of like as much time as they possibly, need in order to sell you on whatever bullshit they're hawking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure on some level it's also probably a bit of a Disney critique as well. At least on the Bosstones side for the mouse reference.
Oh wow, okay. I hadn't even thought about the Disney connection there.
Because I mean, it goes right in line with what you're saying too, as far as like business and selling things to consumers and shit. I mean, if you're looking to sell stuff to consumers, the one of the first, especially now, like 20 years later, look at what Disney owns.
Oh, for sure.
Or what they don't own, I think, is maybe a more accurate metric.
Yeah, that's the scary part. What don't they own at this point?
All right, well, let's talk about some final thoughts on this album then. What was everybody's favorite song?
Man, it feels hacky to pick an opener, but I really do think Anti-Manifesto is probably my favorite, just because it just sets the table for everything about this band.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. I go back and forth. I mean, for me, it's probably Fuck Machine. But Holly Celici Up Your Ass is just so different. And it's just so good that, I mean, it's between those two for me. But yeah, also like, Showdown and Anti-Manifesto, phenomenal songs. Like these are songs that like really define this record and this time period, I think.
For me, it was Stick the Flag Up Your Ass. Definitely, I think it's been my favorite pretty much since I bought the record.
Wow.
I love that song. So I think we might be in agreement in terms of trimming the fat.
Yeah. Yeah, you just don't need the Cheap Trick cover.
The cheap trick cover isn't there. And I don't think there's anything. Did any of us have a song that we really didn't enjoy?
I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy it, but I don't know that I needed This Might Be Satire on the record. I think that could have definitely been like a 7-inch B-side or a comp track. And I would have swapped it in for like, Pigs Will Pay or something like that, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's mostly what saves This Might Be Satire for me is just the music. I think it's just a fucking, it's just a really fun song. But yeah, I mean, honestly, like taken as a whole, the Cheap Trick cover is the only thing that I didn't enjoy and just don't need.
Sure.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. If you listening have any questions, comments, or most importantly, corrections, because we're probably wrong about a lot of stuff on anything we might have gotten wrong, please email us at ontherecord@gmail.com. That, of course, is spelled just like Fat Records might be, so that we can set the record straight in future episodes. We're going to be back in 2 weeks with our first EP-based episode where we're going to cover No Use for a Name's The Daily Grind and Rancid's Radio EP.